Hello, my fellow dog lovers. I'm Sean O'Connor with the Hall of Fame dog training business, and I wanted to share with you very briefly some of the names that I consider to be in my Hall of Fame of dog trainers. I will certainly in the future, or at least I plan to in the future, make a video where I describe either I'll go long and just list every trainer and what I learned from them, what I take from them, or I will maybe just do profiles one at a time. That's something going on in the future. So I'm just going to give you the names just to throw them out there so you know where I'm coming from on a really quick, quick, brief, and easy way, as opposed to a more in-depth. Okay, so first of all, as you may or may not know, I am a student of the Catch Canine Trainers Academy and the Grisha Stewart Training Academy. So that's where I take actual structured courses. And I intend in the near future to begin taking courses under Michael Shikashio. But I don't want to do too much all at one time. So here's a quick look at the list then. And I'm reading it just because I don't want to forget. So I'm looking at it. I have a list on the wall of my Hall of Fame of teachers and mentors and references. I may have forgotten a name or two because I'm always adjusting things. However, this is just a basic list. So number one, as I mentioned Catch. So obviously I'm heavily influenced by the team, the Catch Canine Academy. And I mentioned Grisha Stewart. I am heavily influenced by her. Now, here's where things get very interesting. And I suspect some people are going to consider this controversial. I do study both Cesar Millan and Victoria Stilwell, despite the fact that they're both extremely different. And I feel like I need to actually make a remark on this one thing, because I have encountered in different dog training groups people that there's a lot of condescension if you are within the group of people that takes more interest in the work of Cesar Millan and Joel Beckman and Robert Cabral, Tom Davis, or these people often mock the folks like Victoria Stilwell and Zach George, which I don't really think is cool. They'll say, no, you can't just solve every little problem with a treat, or there will be talk about pack theory, which, to be clear, there's no reason to subscribe to pack theory. It's been debunked by the person who actually did the research and coined the term. So why people still do go about preaching pack theory, I don't know. I guess they don't have the information. So that's my thought there. On the other hand, you have people in the purely positive or even mainly positive reinforcement camps where even in the Lima, least invasive, minimally aversive camps, there's a lot of dismissing, specifically of Cesar Millan. And I find that disingenuous, and here's why. It's all about context. Now, to be clear, I don't agree with everything Cesar Millan does. And in fact, I take issue at times with the degrees of intense energy and force that he applies in his communication with dogs. Sometimes I don't agree with it. Do I think it's animal cruelty, however? First of all, no. I think it's misapplication. I don't think it's really like abuse or cruelty, because the alternative is euthanasia. And in my opinion, 99% of the time, euthanasia for behavior problem is probably not necessary, since these sort of like super sociopath, highly genetics based problem aggression cases are actually pretty rare. So, my point being that while I personally believe that often Cesar Millan has used a little bit too much force, I don't think that it was abusive force or cruel force. I just think it was too much force. I look at it more actually like scientifically and academically, metaphysically, or physically, if you will. Cesar Millan, I also think we should reframe the way we think about him and consider him a lot more like we consider Michael Shikashio. That is to say that one thing Cesar Millan is exceptional at, when you think about the concept, is defensive handling. That's a concept that does not get discussed enough in dog training, or in really the whole industry of dog care. And I learned this actually the hard way, but I think the right way too. And here I'm going to say thank you to Joel Beckman, who is one of my favorites as well. Joel Beckman had mentioned, if you really want to become a dog trainer, work at a doggy daycare and learn how to manage dogs in those kind of contexts. And he's absolutely right. All of the fundamentals that I learned in terms of actual handling of dogs came from my experience at a doggy daycare. I would even add, as a sort of silver lining to an unfortunate situation, where the doggy daycare was under resourced and not properly managed from the highest levels, and thus I would find myself in situations where I'm alone with like 40 plus dogs, and multiple fights are breaking out at the same time, and I'm by myself, so and not actually trained in terms of what to do about that. So I had to basically experiment a lot and find out what was going to work and what was not going to work. What would be too much force, what would be too little force, was the right degree of force. And by force, I just mean like expression of energy. The degree to which you body block a dog, the degree of force you put into a body block, or the degree to which you pull the leash, those kinds of things. Even to the point of learning how to quiet dogs down, a whole group of dogs. These are all things I learned in the doggy daycare setting. But what also came across in this experience is that the way you're going to handle a dog is so not one size fits all. It's so unique. It's so complex, complicated. It's so dependent on so many variables. Seriously. So in some cases, it's a fact that if you want to deter a dog from killing another dog, you may have to do some sort of leash correction or several corrections in the process of doing other things. And that's, it's unfortunate when it comes to that. But, like sometimes that's the kind of thing you need to do. Sometimes you need to be extremely assertive with dogs. It's just a fact. That's science and practical. The issue here is that there's a lot of again, I hate to beat a dead horse on this topic, but there's so much of this being macho and tough and aggressive, assertive, or being very nice and positive reinforcement. Uh, but the thing is, that's not really what it's about. It's about determining